Hey everyone, welcome to your daily update for BTC SOL market cap. All things, all things interesting that's going on today. So first, huge day today. So we have a heck of a lot of time frames closing, everything from sort of a 2D all the way up to a 120. We don't really bother with the 240 because it's a bit too, but not enough real information. Can't really draw anything from it. But what's also interesting is tomorrow we have a prime day. So this is the type of day where they can make a heap of structural change based on all of these timeframes and a bunch of new trends, a bunch of new levels, and then they can go into tomorrow where none of it really matters and can throw the price around. We're also getting really close to end of month, and we also have Bitcoin futures expiry. So yeah, it could be a good time for a bit of a sweep. So let's have a look and see what they're doing with liquidity. So as far as the liquidity goes, they are in basically normalizing it. So on the 1 day, they've built liquidity up to sort of around that 221, 223 area for SOL and down to sort of around the 200. And on Bitcoin, they sort of haven't really bothered to build it much past 115. And I think that's possibly because there are some hold levels that they're going to generate today at about 115 for rejection. So they're almost just the liquidity is forming along with the structure. So you probably see a sweep down, sweep up type scenario, or the other way around. And down to sort of around that 109 area for the lower area. And if we have a look at the 7 day, 7 day is pretty much showing that people are very bearish on Bitcoin. And if there was to be a short squeeze, the first chunk would get wiped out by the time you sort of went over 114. And then if they went up to sort of like 117, 118, they'd pretty much wipe out all the 7 day shorts. And if they wanted to offset that to the downside, areas like 106 are starting to build, which is interesting. Let's say that's actually relatively bearish, and we might see a bigger pullback on Bitcoin than the whole 108, 110 area. For SOL, it's like the polar opposite. Everyone has gone giga bullish. There's that liquidity they could grab up to 120, but realistically, everything is to the downside with ginormous clusters sort of around that 200, then down into the 180s. And if we look at the 30-day, Bitcoin, very bearish. They would be, if they squeezed up to 119, 120, they would be wiping out an absolute ton of shorts. But there's not a huge amount of reason there to be dipping below, 108, 107. And for SOL, again, it's sort of topping out about 120 as far as if they were to go up and take out any of the shorts. And then they've got the same clusters sort of, peak. You got a peak there at about 200, then down to sort of like about that 193, 195 area, and then really to get access to a large chunk of liquidity after that, they'd have to be all the way down in the 170s. Interesting comments in the group today. That a lot of this liquidity down here in the 170s, it's not trapped. So if whales or big money algo traders, if they were going to try and push the price down to that, the thing is a lot of the positions down there could actually close in profits before it even gets there, which would make it almost a wasteful or inefficient thing to be targeting now. So it's still possible. Greed and that kind of thing generally own the market, so they might want to push the price down there to take all that, particularly if there is a big player that hasn't really deployed a long and they need somewhere that they can really deploy a big long, then yeah, okay, they could push it down there for that reason, but it's becoming less and less likely the more positive structure that is developing on SOL that it can actually reach those levels. But certainly the 200s and the 190s and maybe even sort of the 180s are still pretty good targets. So let's have a look at the other view. What have they been up to? So yeah, pretty much Bitcoin has just been moving, bit of a downwards trend. quite flat, took out all that leverage that it induced. So as it was pumping around, people were starting to open those high level longs, and then obviously they've taken all that. And SOL's been shifting its liquidity bracket upwards. So if we sort of zoom out on this, you can kind of see how it's just laddering. So we had a top in here, and then that ladder went up, and then it went up, and it's pretty much just building liquidity to the upside. So there will be a short squeeze on this at some point. It's just whether or not they take any of this stuff to the downside here first, which, you know, can happen, particularly with what we've got closing in the next couple of days. But SOL just looks insanely bullish across everything you look at. So at the moment, they would take out all of that low time frame liquidity if they went up to about 224, and if they went down to 193, 192, they'd wipe out the entire other side. So, and interestingly for BTC, that sort of means 117 to the upside and 106 to the down. And the 117 targets are in play, and there are hold levels there. So it's really just a case of which way are they going to go first, and whichever one it is, you're going to want to be on the opposite side of that. So if they dump it down, then you're just going to want to be laddering into your longs. If they take it up to the top, you're going to want to short those higher hold levels, because they may not go all the way to 117 and then come all the way back down to 106, but if they go to 117, they will come back down to something. So it's a good place to be looking at shorting. And okay, let's have a look at these charts. Okay, so SOL BTC strength on the daily is nuts. It's well up over its trend. It's going to hard close that trend today. So when they hard close that trend, that is when you could see a pullback to trend or a retest, particularly because it's so highly elevated up above it. That might mean that you do get a bit of weakness. But the real bullish thing here would be a close above that level. So where are we? 0.00190012. If we close above that, we're actually closing above a break level from back in March. And in doing so, it now has these options. It can just flip giga bullish and just bounce off that and keep going up. You know, not all trends that are broken get retested. So there's not really a promise that it's going to come back down to here, but or back down to the 176 sort of area. But it is also hard closing a break level at 17933 on the daily, which is also a break level origin. So this is pretty important break level, and that does have a higher probability of being retested. So if we're looking for where this could come back to, trend is an option, but it may not go there. The break level is a higher probability option, but given that it's an origin break level, if it does go there, the chances of it then just absolutely bouncing off that and flying up to one of these higher hold levels or break levels or origin levels, all up in that 0.002 area, is really high probability. So this is just looking super bullish. I'd say at some point, what it's really aiming for is to move back to the exterior trend, which is generally speaking what price does. Once it breaks an interior, it's trying to go to the exterior, and then it just has to work its way through all the holds and breaks on its way up, which is why price ladders. But yeah, it's just looking really bullish. If we have a look at that on a weekly view, not that we're at weekly close yet, but we've hit the weekly break level from back in March. So we should see some kind of retracement. We could come back to the weekly range trend. They might be waiting till next week to do this. So because they are going to close over. I'll just move that back. It should be there. They are going to close back over this weekly range trend if the price stays up here. So pretty much anything over, from a weekly perspective, anything over 18146 on weekly close is going to be breaking back up into that range, Once we break back up into that range, the next targeted range rejection is up here at the 00204 area. And so that's just added confluence that SOL is going to push, it's really going to push. And if it stays above this break level of 19012, if it stays above that, which is also, there's some really old time frame ranging in here, which is down at that 18780. So effectively, it could be moving back up into this 2 candle range. And yeah, it's really just, all you can say is this is really bullish. Like you've seen the strength that SOL's exhibited this week. It hasn't actually even really broken back into these ranges yet, but in 3 days it will. And then if it retests them, well, as long as it doesn't tank in 3 days, I should say, if it retests these ranges, then you're probably going to see some kind of bullish behavior out of SOL that just, makes faces melt. So it's just looking really good. Any opportunity to long it if it dips is likely to play out very positively for you. And if we look at that on a monthly scale, it's pushing, this has got 3 days to go as well. It's pushing back up. So this is the area I think will be the rejection of strength, which is going to be the monthly hold level at 0.00202232. Great number. And but it will also be closing above the monthly break level. It will also be closing back above the monthly range trend. So for it to drop below the 0.0018 or the 17770 area would be possible for a retest, and it would be possible as a target for the rejection of that hold level at the 20232 area, but it's highly unlikely that it actually goes a lot deeper than that. So once it hits this hold level, so technically if you were to be looking at where could it go, well, yeah, it could go back down to the 153 area, 15319, which would be the 1618 of that hold candle. But it's going to have, excuse me, but it's going to have this range trend in here. It's going to have this break level, and it's going to have these trends down here at the 1.6s. So, the probability of this thing actually being able to play out a move to the downside to any real extreme is just getting harder and harder because too many good supportive things are getting put in the path. So yeah, that's looking really strong. In fact, it's just looking really strong. Okay, so, and this is where it gets really interesting. So BTC dominance is bouncing, so it's actually going up, even though SOL is going up more. So it's just a incredible thing to watch, really, from a strength perspective. We are hoping that we're going to close under this 64.71% today, and even better would be to close under the 64.59, just in that sort of area. In fact, kind of exactly where it is now. If we can close here, then we can reject off the backside of all of this and try to target these lows again. So that's sort of what we are hoping for in that respect. The more times we can close under this older range trend, the more likely it is that we can just get this move down to the 62% area, which lets things just absolutely fly. So that's enough of that. Okay. And our totals are still really just kind of in limbo. They're just kind of in the middle. We still have the support of the new support trend, which we moved the other day when this candle closed blue, and we're still under the resistance. So really we're just flagging. It sort of says the entire market is looking for a breakup or a breakdown, which is really all you can draw from that. But which way it's going to go first is anybody's guess. No one's going to be able to, no one's that psychic. So, but as it currently stands, we haven't lost the support. We haven't broken the resistance. We're probably just going to keep bouncing through in here on the total. Okay, let's have a look at, actually, I think I might have another total chart here. Right, so this is just another total viewed from a different slightly different manner. So this has a hold level up here at 3.7 trillion, and that has been bouncing off this range trend support here. And so it is probably heading back to that hold level. So although I say no, I can really say exactly whether we're going to go up or down first, we do probably have a better chance of a little bit more of a pump into that hold level before any chance of this trend actually breaking down. So might make that a little bit more probability to the upside. Okay, Bitcoin. All right. So Bitcoin on the daily. As you can see, we're rejecting, but we do have the possibility of a hold level being created here as long as we can close the day over 111,700. And if we do get that daily hold level, then we should bounce back to the new trend. So what will happen is that this trend that's currently running down here today, this will get broken. It'll shift up to the top side here, and if we get that hold level and we bounce off that hold level, we'll get run back up to that trend. And like I say, with the strength of SOL at the moment, if this does play out, we're going to see a bounce up to sweep that higher liquidity area that they've been forming. Now the other way is that these things can open and they can float, or they can go up first and then reject off the trend back down to try and break the hold. So the direction that it goes will give us an idea about what it's trying to do next. But so as it currently stands, we're going to get a trend break. The wick is way too long. If we get a close over the 111,700 area, which is going to be in here, then that becomes our 1 day hold. And with that new trend, we will be seeing some kind of action between these levels. Okay, let's have a look at the 2-day. So 2 days floating. It's got a rejection level up there at 114,210, and it is currently working its way towards the trend. So so that's hit that front side level. Our trends have moved, and we're basically floating. The reason I say we're floating is we haven't actually gone back to the new trend since it's moved. So if it does, there will be a scalp off that trend. And if it hasn't touched that hold level to the upside, when it goes to that trend, then you scalp the trend, you go to the hold level. So that trend is going to be down there at about 109. And based on an exchange native close that happened yesterday and a short that is in play, that 109 level looks pretty good as a target, and then a bounce, and then a target of that hold at 114. Let's have a look at the 3-day. So 3 days still in rejection off its hold level. So if you're taking that short, you'd be in profits. It hasn't actually hit the range trend yet. It's not going to relocate the downtrend. It's not going to relocate the uptrend. Really not too much to be said on this. It hit the backside target down there in that 108.8 area. It's done its bounce back to the hold. Yeah, if it was to go up a little bit and sort of, if we can close the day over 112.1, that sort of level, you could open the next candle on the other side of trend, which would be, I guess, bullish to get a little bit of momentum moving to the upside, but there's not really too much you could trade right now on the 3-day. It's just kind of, it's done its thing. You could have longed down here or you could have shorted there. Either way, you would have been good, but that's sort of all played out now. So if we look at the 4-day, so the 4-day close is looking pretty bearish. So this is going to lose the uptrend. Because unless it gets back up over 113,459 by the end of the day, it's going to lose that uptrend. It's also below the range trend, and it would have to get back up over 112,600 roughly to get back over there. It's also below the break but it's not a hard close break yet. So this is looking pretty bearish. What's going to happen is we're going to end up with a relocated trend. It's going to move from where it is, not that one, this one. It's going to move from where it is to down here. And that gives us some confluence in that 109 area for the other short that's in play. So effectively what we're saying is we now have support at the target of the short. So if we head down there, we should bounce. And if we do hit that first, it would come back up and retest the backside of the range it's breaking out of. So that sort of gives you an entry around the 109s and then a first TP up around the 112s. So that's overall bearish to dip, but looks like that bearish dip will find support because of the relocation of the trend. So look at the 5-day. So 5-day is going to open on the wrong side of trend. It's going to open on the wrong side of the break level unless it gets back up over that 1126. So you see we've got all these time frames now starting to add up. Also, 5-day has had a backside bounce, but it hasn't revisited the front side. The front side is 108.297. So it may go down to complete the short, dive the new trend that's moved for liquidity based on the lower time frame, and hit that front side target to then bounce back up. So that's all possible. If we break this level, this 107,400 level, that might change things a wee bit, because then we're talking, we're breaking down on some of these bigger ranges. Really, you don't really want to be doing that. So what else are we seeing here? We're not going to move our trend. It could be a lot more bearish if the daily closes under 1116, because then we are potentially opening on the wrong side of the range trend. We'd much rather dive a range trend knowing that we get to go back up than open on the wrong side of a range trend and potentially have to go further down. Although if we do open on the wrong side of that 5-day range trend, the target would just be the 108.297 anyway, and then it could keep going down for another 5 days, but it would ultimately build a new range trend based on the hold level, and that range trend would then be able to reverse price, however that ended up being. It creates some new trend. So so many time frames today. So the 6-day is going to potentially open on the wrong side of the range trend. So this needs to either go back up above 112, really has to get back up above 113s if this wants to be up above that range trend. So the target for this is also 108.297. So actually, regardless of whether the 5-day probably doesn't matter what the 5-day does, the 6-day is quite likely just to reject anyway. So it's bigger time frame, and it already looks like it's going to lose its levels. So I'll be opening longs down here and running them back up, just low leverage and adding if it dips lower. Let's have a look at our 8-day. Well, 8-day is really bearish. It's going to lose its general uptrend today. Trend is going to move to here. It's already bouncing off its hold level. I mean, you may see this go down to trend and then back up as a secondary test of that. If it dived the trend, it would have to be going for really a retest of one of these levels. So these 106 levels, so that's interesting because we're getting 106 in the short-time liquidity at the moment. And this candle here is the break candle back in June, and we've not had a retest of these levels yet. So trend might move, we might get a dive of trend to retest break, and then we might get a move back up. The thing about this though is it hasn't actually retested the topside trend from the hold that's up there, and it won't have a hold to stop it anymore. So this is, although this might be short-term bearish and it might imply that we get a liquidity sweep of the 106K area, it also implies that we could then head to 126. Right, so that's a bigger time frame, but it's good and bad. Right, 10-day. So 10 days is going to open on the wrong side of trend. It's not breaking its main uptrend, but it is losing its interior trend. So this is getting quite tricky. There's a trend break technically happening here, but it's not a trend break of the exterior. It's a trend break of the interior. So this could lead to a dip. Where would we bounce? 108.350 or 16 would be the untested levels. So nothing else changes, nothing else moves on that, but that's got confluence. So there we go. So there's some resistance that's going to form at 115 on Bitcoin today. So 12-day time frame, we'll get a hold level. We're going to open on the wrong side of the 12-day trends, but we're not breaking any of them. So not bad from a long-term perspective, but what it does show is that you could see a move between same sort of numbers really, 106, 108, and 115. If it drops first, finds the support here, bounces up to attack the hold level, then it may break the hold level to continue up to reclaim the trend, to then move up to, funnily enough, the topside trend, which is about 125. So might be getting close to that final flush and move. Let's have a look at 15-day. So 15 days is going to generate resistance at 117,900. So that'll be another hold level. It's got a 106 level, which is pending a retest. It's not losing its uptrend technically, so that's not so bad. And if it was to travel back up, it's about 125 to 120, anywhere from sort of 125 to 129 to hit the resistance trends if it overcomes the 117,900. And 16-day, it's building resistance at 119, 414. So that's another hold level. This is going to open on the wrong side of trend, and it's already tapped its hold level. So they may be waiting to open this candle to move back up as high as that sort of 119 hold and then reject off that. This is actually quite a scary looking time frame, to be fair. So we've got a wee bit of, so this level here at 102 is already had a break, a retest, a bounce. So this is the first time frame really that is actually showing that potentially you're going to head back to a trend that's sub 100, and with a hold level that's like 84. So fingers crossed it just bounces off one of these other levels and then gets back above the trend and continues to move up. What else we got going on? 20-day needs to do a hard close retest, and that level would be about 107 roughly. So 107.217. And then if it bounces off that to some new high, eventually what's going to happen is it's going to come back to 84. So it looks, these are the kind of things that imply final stages going on. Not to mention if you just look at how many times the trend has been arrayed on Bitcoin, like what, first array, second, third, fourth, things don't typically array more than 5 or 6. So 24-day, same sort of levels, 107, 106. Don't know if I bother too much about that. 99, I probably wouldn't long, unless it had trend confluence at the time. But that level there, that 107, 700 level, Yeah, that could give us a $5,000 move. So anything below that is buying, and just take some TPs at conservative price points, or when it head back towards the trends. This is going to lose its uptrend today. So it's going to move to there. So ideally, it's not a bad thing to lose a trend, because especially if it shifts to the bottom side. But you really want a higher priced close than this, so that the candle is nicely above the trend if you want to bounce. If that comes down even just a little more, then like that 111 level, it's going 111,500, about $500 down from now. If it comes down to there, it'll open on the wrong side of that trend, and then dippity dip. And the 30-day is just still in rejection from its topside trends. Target's 106, and that would be our backside bounce. And then after that finishes off and does its thing, however high it might go, 86 at some point is probably where that'll come back to. And 40-day is just rejecting. This has got sub 100 targets, but it is going to bring a new trend in, which is going to be there. It's going to open on the wrong side of the trend. Yeah, so this is relatively bearish. Now there would have been a previous trend, and I quite often take these off, but there would have been something like, let's see, that's not great. It's all the way down there. So that, yeah, so you sort of see when this trend shifted from there up to there, this was effectively the retest within a bit of a rounding error, obviously, but that was effectively the dump back to retest the trend that had moved. So we're not moving the trend today. We've done the retest of the last time it moved. We do have an interior, which is there. And then we actually have another interior, which is there. So that one moved from there to there. Yeah, nothing here looks good, to be honest. For the long term price of Bitcoin, none of this really looks good. But being a 40-day time frame, it can stay up for a while before it has to come back. But it's looking like it's going to open on the wrong side of that. What you really don't want to see is you don't want to see a close today below 110,228. If it closes below 110,228, that's a 40-day hold level getting created, and that's some pretty solid resistance. So, all right, 48-day below trend 117 would be a retest if it went back up to the backside of that. And we're going to shift our interior today, and it looks like it's right on the line to open on the wrong side of that. Needs to go up if it wants to really survive. And we're going to create a new topside trend. So on the 60-day, the Bitcoin price is actually breaking that. It's breaking the 60-day topside trend today, hard close. As long as it stays over 108 for the rest of the day, and that candle doesn't turn blue. So if it came down to retest that would be a retest of around 100 and maybe 98, somewhere in there. But we are still above that uptrend. So that also means 106 could create the bounce based on this higher time frame. Now the trend is going to shift up to the top side here, and that's going to be about 126. So probably the biggest range in play that I can see is going to be a move from something like this interior trend, and that's going to be sort of 106, 108 is where I would look to ladder into that. with the ability for a shock surprise, we go down and hit 100k, 99k type level down here, which would actually just simply be a retest of the trend moved. So, and then adding into the position there, and then we all go to the beach and we just ride it back to 126. And I think that sounds like a pretty cool thing to be doing. So let's keep an eye out for that. And our 80 days got a 93 target if it continues trend rejection, but it's also got trend support still sitting there. Where that exactly is, let's have a look at that on a lower time frame. Sorry guys if this video just gets really long, but there's a ton of closes today, and so it's one of the hardest days to sort of figure out where's things, what are they trying to do, what is the level out of all these levels that they want to go attack, and is there liquidity there, is it worth them doing it? And so let's have a look at this on a daily. So things can look really far away when you look at them on a high time frame, but when you look at them on a daily, because time is passing, that support trend is actually sitting in about the 108 area. So yeah, so it looks miles away, but it's really not miles away. Yeah, so yeah, still anything really in that 108 area or lower seems to be a case of ladder in, ladder in. So let's go. And there's nothing really happening on this time frame on the 120. It does imply that you might get just a close above trend and maybe a pull back to trend, and then you could bounce off the trend or end up going back under it. There's really nothing tradable sitting there on this. Let's see just where that trend actually is, see if it has any confluence with anything. It's sitting down at 90, 95. So that's got some confluence with some of the levels that exist, but that's about all that says. Okay, let's have a look at SOL. Oh, let's turn our bullish face on. So on the 1 day, SOL is closing above a break level as long as it stays above 210. It's closing above a range trend as long as it stays above 203. This is just looking really bullish. It's closing above an origin level as long as it stays above 206. But SOL can do this. It's a tricky little token sometimes. And it did this to us once on the weekly. It closed above all these levels, but because it's not a hard close, it then just dumped all the way back down. So like always be careful trading SOL. It can be very tricky. But we're going to be up inside the range trends. Everything here looks just really bullish. The top side targets are still around 240. Even just purely based on if we just break one more daily trend. So it's looking bullish on the daily. 2 day is building a hold level at about 206, which it'll use to attack a trend. The only trend really that it could attack would be an exterior trend, which I don't have on here, but I imagine it would be up around the 240s, like everything else. There's some horizontal levels in here around 220, or 219.9, which is a break level that it could reject off. 222, 226, 241, 245, 264. Every single one of these will have some reaction, and it will be just part of the laddering. So that's looking pretty good. It's hard to see where this thing's going to find a reason to pull back. So if we look at the 3 day, so 3 days building a hold level at 200.670. It's closing above an old 3 day range trend at 206. It's closing above a new 3 day range trend at 199. So yeah, and it's closing above basically everything downtrend. Again, it's not a hard close. It hasn't hard closed this level down here at 191.9 either. So anything in that sort of range would be a good place to be laddering into longs based on that time frame. And it's got a hold level up here at 234. So if you capture a range trend around 206, this would be the absolute most bullish thing that could happen, is that you capture that range trend at 206 and it just targets 234, which is the next hold. And that's kind of how range trends work. Once you overcome a range trend, it bounces off it and it targets the next hold to try and create the next topside range trend off that. So when the candle closes, there'll be if it closes yellow, wrong tool again. If it closes yellow up into this 234 area, the range trend will be formed from that yellow wick back there all the way to wherever the candle closes. So and then of course it could reject that range trend and have a big bearish sweep all the way back down to the hold, or by that point it could have created some new structure and there'd be different levels in play. So that's looking really bullish. The only thing I just get PTSD over really is just how many times this trend is arrayed. You would just honestly expect this thing to just dump on everybody at some time soon. It'll recover, but it's gone so far. Okay. And the 4-day. So the 4-day is going to hard close the exterior trend. So that's again really bullish. As long as it stays above 206 for the day, the trend will move up to the top side, and then you could get a rejection then from any of these areas at the top here. So we've got another interior trend just sort of darting through here. We've got a range trend untouched up here. So I keep saying that. We've got all these levels basically about 216 to 223 that could induce the next rejection down. Because after the trend moves from the bottom side there, so where is that? That's 192. So currently that's 192. If it moves from that area where a retest would be 192 and it moves to the top side, and then we've got anything from 216, the backside of the next trend, sort of around 219, and then the range trend up around 226. And I think we have, yes, we do. We have a 2-day hold level at 226.9. Anything sort of up in there could then create a sweep and the retest of the trend moved, which brings us back to that 192 area. So it's got the ability to do it. Okay. 5-day is going to break its trend today. Based on that, the wick is currently, just like the other one really, the wick is too long. Also, it's going to hard close the break level here at 195, so you could get a break level retest. Could all just be part of a bit of a retracement, which it's pretty overdue for. If it goes insanely bullish, it's just going to bounce off the uptrend at 204 and just keep traveling up, in which case really the next target for that's about 245, or the trend above it at about 249. So it's looking very bullish. And same thing for the 6-day. It's going to hard close the break level. 195 would be the pullback if it wanted to retest the break level. It hasn't retested the range trend that's in there. So, well, there's a lot of things that it hasn't retested, so I wouldn't put it past SOL just being a little crazy psycho token and dumping on everybody, but it's just building so much support. So this is above a range trend from February, and that level is about 206. So yeah, if it just goes giga bullish, this thing can just bounce 206s, 204s. There's all these levels that it's creating where it can just bounce those and just keep going up. If it's more of a sustainable, healthy retracement, then yes, 195s and the 180s, but it's looking very bullish. Okay. 108 day. So this is what has rejected. So that was our 216 trend on the 8 day. That rounds from the 2021 high. Now it's rejected below its interior, sort of. It's right there on the line right now. So depends on whether this holds. If it can stay over 212 area, push up just a little bit, so it's a nice clean open above the trend, then again, super bullish. It could just bounce between these two trends and break out through the top. This one has a hold level down at 191. If it starts to pull back before the end of the day and dies back below these trends, then that will almost certainly become the target because it's pushed up through all these trends. So if it closes up here, then the next trend down is about 203, 204. So it really just depends on what this does. But yeah, 191.782 would be the target for this. And the only thing that's going to stop it is if it can just hold itself up here long enough that it can use the backside of the trends to propel up to the next level. Next level would be 226 on this. So that's looking pretty good. Okay. 10 days going to close over top trend again. It's still holding its uptrend. It's not hard closing a break level, so there's not really too much to say with that one. And 12 days closing over top of trend. It's not hard closing anything relevant. It may come back, retest top side of that trend, which is like 192.8 sort of area. And then if it does that, 239s, 247s, all of those targets to the upside really. It's not moving the exterior, but it is hard closing the interior. So absolute bearish scenario on this as it comes back to test that interior, and that is the 170 area. But there's just so much holding this up. So it's kind of hard to say whether it's going to go to those 170s before it travels off to all-time high, because there are timeframes like this that could induce that. Because this is not a hard close of that exterior and it started from the underside of it, this could be a liquidity sweep playing out of the exterior 12-day trend to come back and retest the hard closed interior at 170. So it is very possible. It's pretty hard to see that kind of stuff coming. 15-day is breaking downtrend. The trend will move to the top side, and we could then see a rejection of anything above 214. And it's also a hard close of the range at 187. So if it rejects the trend, it could head to 187. Likewise, if it, because of some other time frame, sends it down, it would just hit the 187 and come back to the trend. So there's going to be some really big swings that this is possible of doing. Let's just hope it does them. It's so much more fun to actually trade things that go up and down than things that just go one way all the time. 16-day is a break of its interior, but not a break of its exterior. So we could see a pullback to retest that. That's in the high 170s. We could see a pullback just to retest the this interior here, I should say, and that would be down to sort of like that 196 area. It hasn't broken that break level at 219.9, so this could also just be hovering because of it. If it closes a candle up here and then goes and hits the break level, then it really only has to retrace to the first trend, which is sort of 196. So there may be a reason that it's just staying here so that it doesn't have to do so much of a dive. It's also going to be getting back up above the distribution range of 204. So 204 is quite a critical area for SOL. So that's looking pretty good. This is looking really bullish. It's going to break out of a 20-day trend. Trend's going to move. At this stage, it needs to be up over the top of, really needs to close over 215 to be in a good position to just continue to pump up from that. But we're still in our uptrend. So we've got a break level that it's pushed through at 187, so that's a reasonable retracement if it went back to that. And we've got 176 as a hold level down there if it rejects off the trend. So yeah, so some of these things are still pointing to 170s. And we're pushing up through our 24-day trend. That's not really telling us too much. It's just all these really high time frames are doing is telling us that we're going to go hit 247 at some point, but you've probably been listening to me enough to know that that's going to happen at some point. And the 30-day is pushing through its trend. This is super bullish. Like, that's 1, 2, 3 trends. This should be distribution, and it's actually going up. So our distribution is going higher, not lower, which is very bullish. 204, which is the break level from December 21. That's a very key level to be above. And yeah, it's not a hard close, obviously, but if we can get above that level and hold above that level for long enough, then everything between here and the 300s becomes basically the range. And the 40-day, we've crept back up inside the trend. If the next candle comes down and hits that trend, which it's kind of like how the parabolic bounces sort of work, once you creep back up inside a high time frame trend, you can come down and hit, say, like around that 193 area, anywhere 193 or lower, and then you would target the next horizontal level, which is going to be that level at about 243. It is we are going above, oh, there you go, look at that confluence of trends. So we're going above this older break level, which is about 193.796. Our uptrend retest would be about 193, same sort of numbers, and then we'd be looking at just sitting back and cruising up into the 240s. So that's looking pretty damn awesome, actually. Okay. And we are going to move a trend today on the 48-day. So we're going to break the lower 48-day trend. It's going to move to the upside where it actually sits at about 216. Let's just see what this looks like on the lower time frame. Oh, it's so close. Okay, so it actually sits at about 215. So if we sweep that trend, we could come back down to that hold level. It's also creating the hold level on the same day at 175.794. So that'd be a pretty wicked flush, but based on all of the support that it would have to dive through to go and do that, it should come back up really, really fast if it does do that. So yeah, laddering into a position anywhere from sort of like the 190s all the way down to sort of that 175 area will be one way to play it. The other way is you just hold off and wait to see if we do come down to the 175, but you might get left behind based on all the other time frames that are in play. So you're probably better off to, even if you just start with a 1x and then build it up from there. And 60-day is pushing through trends. It's closing above 204. That's looking really bullish. It's breaking that interior. Sorry, yeah, it's breaking that trend, but that trend's not really a big trend. And where are we at? 80-day. Did I already do the 80-day? 60? No, I didn't. Yeah, the 80-day. So that's rejecting off that currently, but it hasn't lost its downtrend. 204 is the old 80-day origin level. So as long as it stays above 204, it can find support. If it wanted to retest the interior trend, it would have to come back down to 165, and it just doesn't look like that's what's going to happen at the moment. Let's hope nothing changes and this stuff just stays as bullish as it is. But these types of time frames, you might find that 204 is it, and maybe we bounce from 204 up to what will be our next level, 243. So, and then after 243, we would be heading to 264, or the range trend, that's January through August. Yeah, or we'd be heading to this range trend up here in the 250s and retesting that for a potential rejection back to maybe the trend here. Yeah, so it's everything's sort of pointing to it's not going to be long, and we're going to move into that upper range on SOL, and then we can play the games and bounce around within those. And we're getting another hold level on the 120-day. We've got this level so many times, it's almost impossible for this not to play out now. So even if we dip back and retest the trend at 182, then go to 247. Real question is, do we just bounce off 204 and go straight to 247? That's also possible. And then we start looking at these higher targets, anything 340s, 435s, 529, that sort of stuff. This is just absolutely on a tear. And yeah, if we're lucky enough to get a decent retrace, I'd just be jumping in, because once Bitcoin's finished doing its little dumpy dump and its retracements, if it starts to move forward and SOL has the strength that it currently has now, then yeah, some of those crypto Twitter, higher targets, maybe not $1,000, but some of those targets are definitely worth considering. Particularly for people who are wondering if this is ever going to break its previous all-time high. The strength that it's currently got, the levels that it's building, the trends that it's closing over, and the path that Bitcoin will probably end up having to go through, like with a bit more of a sweep on Bitcoin and then maybe a move up to like 126. Imagine what will happen with SOL if Bitcoin does that. That's yeah, it's entirely possible that you see a huge move. I mean, it's up 5% today, with Bitcoin up 0.68. So it's showing some pretty huge strength. And there'll have to be some kind of reversal of that strength at some point, but it doesn't look like it's going to go to lows. It looks like, if anything, it's going to be making more bullish bounces. So that's the way it all looks to me at the moment. And if you like this content, like and subscribe, and all the other things that YouTubers say. Come join us in the Discord if you want to learn more. And sorry if the video was a bit long. I might just try to put a quick speed summary version out after close. But yeah, it would have to move. It'd have to make some pretty big moves really today for anything to change on SOL in the next 2 hours. Bitcoin's a bit more on the fence. Like, if it goes up or down by a couple of $100, then it can change what it's going to do next. But yeah, all things looking pretty good. And take care, trade safe, and let's try to catch this thing before it really pops and retire with Lambos. All right, catch you later. Bye.